because it's yellow
I
flag.
thought I said.
Right.
I mean,
I don't think.
It's
you know, say anything, I don't even know.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yes,
it's still there.
Well, go ahead and call our meeting to order here tonight. Thanks for coming. Just real quick, we'll do introductions on Bob, KI4JWK.
AI4SR.
A4 USA, Frank.
KQ4 SIZ, Anthony.
KO4UHG, Joseph.
WD4OWB, Tony.
Bob, KK2ICU.
KQ4VPC, Peter.
Lucas, KY4DMD.
Linda, KQ4 RFO.
KQ4 MMR, Teresa.
KY4ZL Dave 2.
RW84HF.
James K3OB.
David, one, I guess, W9KHC,
Over here, well, again. Mark, KQ4 NBB.
and Tim.
And I'm in the corner, I've been a bad boy, Lord KB4FEE.
And our videographer.
Tim, KY4LE.
Welcome.
Formerly STD.
Yeah, formerly STD, and that's why.
Not forget STD and get passed around.
Stop.
Penicillin.
Now it's just, do we have any like upgrades or new licensees? And birthdays? That have happened since our last meeting?
Nobody's gonna do it anymore, ancient.
More each, yeah. Sometimes we can just look and tell. So I wanted to remind everybody, if you're interested in being an officer on the board, let Brad James or Bart know. They're getting ready to finalize the ballots. I guess we'll just do the officers real quick. David?
David, I'm the first vice president. I guess it's over operations. It's been so long since we met. It was back in August. We've got quite a bit of the work done outside with the antennas. Some changes on the repeaters. The 440 is now on the tower there on Nicholasville Road at Pasadena. And the 220 is up there as well. They both work great. Good repeaters, good footprint on both of them. The 7.6 is doing well. Sometimes we get a little noise when it's raining, which is troublesome, but we'll get that figured out. Then do have a request, two requests for repeaters. One in Wolf County. I got to get down there and talk to those people. Got some ideas about maybe putting some of our extra repeaters on fire towers that's owned by the National Forestry Service. And that way we'd have free electricity in a good tall spot. So that's something I'm working on there. We've got we have about 12 repeaters in the basement right now, not being used. So we need to do something with them. We will. Then Garrett County, Lancaster, a guy down there is working to try to get us a spot on the tower. Down there, there's a radio station tower, and he knows somebody, so he's working on that. Maybe put a UHF repeater down there. So that's it. The 7165 in Cynthiana is doing well. It did well all through the storms and everything. You want me to talk about this real quick?
Yeah, okay.
I passed this out. Let me get Mark one. And this is, it's just, in case you're wondering, I stapled it together backwards. So page 1 is actually page 2. It's supposed to be page 1. So there was quite a bit of, I'm going to use the word grumbling.
Complaining.
Huh?
Complaining is what I was doing.
You were, yeah, I was being nice, kind of. Grumblings and I guess confusion, and the last weather event that we just had blow through here, Helene, there wasn't really any information coming across our repeater about anything. People were using it as James was saying, that there were some people using it, but if there's a weather event, I wrote this up last year, and it's not carved in stone, it can be edited, and it doesn't have to be, I guess what I'm saying is, it doesn't really have to be any particular one person. Personally, I was sitting in the dark, and I had no power. Neighbor's tree took out a big chunk of my privacy fence and ripped all the lines off my house. So I wasn't really in any situation to run a net. But anybody can do this. And I just thought that this preamble would be handy if you were sitting there on the repeater listening and there's nobody talking, and you wanted to start talking and you wanted to stay within some sort of contextual stuff. You know, the repeater it's our repeater. I'm the, I guess, the gatekeeper of the repeater, because my call sign's linked to it, but I mean, I don't care. If anybody wants to start a weather net and talk about the weather, this is just a suggested format to stay within, is all this is. Does that make it clear? I think it's pretty precise, and on the second page, which really should have been the first page, kind of gives you an idea of the type of stuff that needs to be reported. And, you know, we really don't want to talk about a lost dog, although we could, you know, but if it's a weather, if it's a Skywarn net, we probably ought to stay within the weather stuff. But is there any questions on that? I mean, Frank, I know you were kind of...
I got a real question.
Okay.
Who all Skywarn trained?
You what? Skywarn train?
Not this year.
Not many. Okay, I just was wondering because, you know, that's, if you're going to do a weather net, the first thing is, you know, what you need to look for. And the Skywarn thing tells you what to look for and how to identify it verbally. So, you know, the first thing you want is some Skywarn people to report immediately.
Just to give a little history, and in no way am I casting dispersions on this facts. There was some questions about it. I know Frank said something about why do we even do the Aries net and this and that if here's an actual emergency and nobody's on the net. And again, I don't really think that needs to fall on one person, but I did talk to Nash about it on Saturday, and he said basically he has nothing to do with it, don't want anything to do with it. And so us amateurs, and we're not focused on the EOC because they got their thing they're doing and we stay out of their way, but if we want to share information amongst ourselves, then it's going to be amongst ourselves and it's going to be up to ourselves, is all I'm saying.
Actually, no, we have plenty of ways of sharing information with, say, the National Weather Service, for instance, has got a dozen different inputs.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is somebody sitting there in the dark and they can turn on their Bofang and turn on the 7.6 and listen to it for a while and hear some information about what's going on in their general area with other area hams, you know, trees down, power's out, blah, blah, blah. Those types of things, just so people don't feel like they're out there alone. I mean, no particular training needed, as I'm saying. That's why you've got the preamble. It's not rocket science, but and we won't tie up the repeater all day either. But I think that if we decide, whoever decides to do it on the 30-minute or every 25, 25 minutes on the hour, and 125, 225, we're going to talk about it for 5 minutes, and just so that there's some consistency. Is all I'm saying. But I mean, we were talking about it on the net last night, and Aston piped in and said, he mentioned your name, Dave, and not so young the bus, but he said you all had your thing you're doing, and it wasn't about, this is different. And I tried to tell him, yes, this is different. This is just an informational thing to pass information about what's going on in our backyard, basically. I know Vic called me, Vic and Oz, I don't know if y'all know Vic or not, but he was stranded in his car with power lines in front of him and power lines behind him on the road. But, I mean, he was in a city car, he'd already called KU and all that, he didn't need help, but it's kind of interesting to know that on this particular road, there's trees down and power lines across the road, you know?
Well, like, out of Worley Main City Road, there's like 9 trees down the road, completely blocked, but you could drive so far down it, and it wouldn't work to turn around. So if you just come off Sales Road, turned in there, you're just gonna get stuck, or have to back up other traffic, take a chance on getting hit or stuff. You know, it's kind of ugly.
But, you know, the reason a lot of us got into amateur radio was for communications, basically, when all else fails. And I know there were some people talking about how they had no cell phone coverage. And I know that, and I'm sure they were coordinated with the first responders down in Asheville, North Carolina area. I'm sure they were, you know, it was an official Aries or Races organization or something. But amateur radio was critical down there. I mean, if
Verizon
you look
went out
on
the other day
Facebook.
for 10 hours.
Say again, Frank.
Verizon went out locally here for about 10 hours the other day.
James has got something to share.
I just want to, I mean, I was without power too. I wasn't in the same situation Dave. I didn't have any power. I was running on battery power. I did get on the 7.6 after I hooked up the battery and kind of threw my call sign out there to make sure it was working and everything. Talked to David. I think I talked to you at some point, Frank.
I think we talked.
I've talked to several people, but I didn't spend a lot of time on there because I was on battery power. And I told everybody that, hey, I'm on battery power. Later in the day, though, I ran into a situation. I went and got gas for my generator. And when I got back, I heard there was Steve, KO4TXB. He was on there. He was wondering where to go get gas. I talked to him, gave him some information about where to go get gas. At that point, Asden was on there. There was a guy on Interstate 64 that was on there asking about the east side of town, if there was any place he could get gas. Dave, were you on there? I think, did I talk to you at some point?
No.
I can't remember, but I talked to a bunch of people. But my point is, I don't know, I never felt like, every time I got on the radio, somebody answered me. And I mean, this is great. But
We had something like this happen
I hauled out a couple times and I couldn't
about
find
2
it.
months ago, and I talked to Dave Richardson, number 2. We were having winds, rain, all the typical stuff, and Dave just normally brought a net up. It wasn't called ERAS, it wasn't called EOC, it was just an amateur radio net brought it up to exchange information on weather, what people were experiencing, things like that. I thought that was how it's supposed to work.
yeah, I mean, that was kind of the point I was
Okay,
making.
here's my
I
question.
never felt like I was alone. I mean, every time that I got on the radio, somebody answered me or somebody was already on it. So,
I was actually, when I did it, sorry Frank, I'll get out in a sec. When I did it, I was saying, okay, is there anybody with problems in, right here that needs to be covered? In other words, I was trying to make a point of, let's find out who's got trouble. And so that's what I was running it for. I wasn't trying to be, sociable or anything. I wanted to basically be the guy that said, okay, we need, if there is a problem, we need to get somebody there, fine. I've got a phone that still works. If he doesn't, I got that covered.
Good.
That's what I was there for.
The point was, it was totally informal. We brought it up and 6 or 8 people all checked in, if you will, exchanged information. I said, this is perfect.
I went on it and didn't hear a soul.
I'm sorry?
I went on it and I didn't hear a soul. I looked back up.
Oh, you mean just this
The
last
last
one?
hurricane.
Yeah, I know. Just-
I'll make a motion, we drop the Aries net because we don't have anything to do with the state or anybody else to connect us, to activate us. Wait a minute, listen to me. Why have it? So just have a weather net like we're talking about.
Let me then explain.
Okay.
AriesNet is totally a different thing. AriesNet is
It's
a,
communications and national disaster.
it's, yeah,
we
it
didn't
is,
have a
but
natural disaster.
But
Huh?
the
We
areas,
didn't have a national disaster.
It could have been.
North Carolina had a national.
All right, but they didn't know they was gonna get it.
I know.
but
All right,
the
we could've
areas
got it.
net is a, basically an equipment check net. That's what it is, unless we needed to activate it, which we would be woefully unprepared if we needed to
And who
activate it.
would
in
activate
July.
it?
Huh?
Who would activate it?
Well, that's the thing, we don't really have.
That's the problem.
All right,
If-
tell us who to activate it and let them activate it. What is
One thing I brought up to, I guess with Frank, I've checked in a couple of theirs nets, just because they're at the end of one of our other nets or something, and I'm there, so I do it, but I have no idea what that's all about. If you wanna check your radio, I can check my radio anytime I want.
But some people
Everybody
don't.
does.
Some
But
people
why
don't.
it's like a little game. It's who wants to check in? 20
Yes.
people check in, okay,
That's
thanks.
what it is.
What was it all about?
If you're
It's
involved
a-
in the whole Aries thing,
Yeah.
which most people are not,
It's
that most people aren't. I mean, Aries, basically in this district.
None of the control operators
District
remember how.
5 here in central Kentucky
Yeah.
is basically dead as far as the Aries is concerned. But if you are involved in the Aries, you get points.
You're supposed to
For-
hand in your log.
So it is a game.
It is a game. It is a game.
Wait,
It's a
let me
qualification
just
game.
suggest something, and I know there's nobody here gonna make that decision, but it seems to me, because they have, military has nets, something similar to this, but what you do is, you pass traffic, could be fake traffic. I mean, that's what an ERS net, if it ever gets activated and it really needs to, you're not testing your radio.
Right.
You're testing how well someone can pass traffic.
I don't
That's-
disagree with that. That's why we set up Glenn Foley to come give us a class and to test how to pass traffic. I mean, these are things, as net control, and I've told Frank this and I've told other people this, when it's your week on net control for Aries, it's your baby. Do with it what you want. You know, you can throw different things out there, different scenarios, and ask questions. I mean, as net control, you basically have full control over how you want the net to go, and what information you want to get, and how much you want pushback from the attendees, and all of that stuff. So it's up to the net control to direct the net.
All right, yeah, but you just made a statement a minute ago that's for the purpose of seeing if everybody's equipment works.
That's the
It
main
kind of
purpose.
limits it. It kind of limits it.
All right, there's two different things going on here. One is, yes, we do equipment check. That isn't the only thing, okay? So that makes sense. The point, the reason that I personally have not done any of the other stuff, like, for instance, Weather Watch, and weather, that kind of thing, is because it's a lot of work to set up. I gotta sit here and figure out what I gotta put together and actually say, okay, I need this and this and this. And then I got to put together the speech that I'm gonna give that tells people, okay, I need you to do this, and so on. In other words, I gotta do a mini course. And to be honest with you, it's a half-hour time slot max. There isn't a lot of time. So it just never seemed like there was any real space or time for what you really wanted to do, even if you wanted to do it.
Well,
In 1 minute, there will be a net on HF, an Aries net
Yes.
statewide on 3972.5 lower start band.
And I've done that.
And you really, if you want to know who's on, or in areas around the state, then do that sometime on Monday nights. And the traffic is passed if there's any passed on that. State EOC is, if there are any there, we'll check in on that net. You'll learn a little more about areas there.
What is it, 39 what?
Meters.
79, 25.
3972.
Oh, 80 meter, that's right, yeah.
39 what?
3972.5.
I have trouble hitting it for some reason, it's
Every
too
Monday
close.
night, 7:30.
It's too close for me.
I was able to get it just fine from our route here.
But having said that, if people want and I kind of agree with James, if you want the repeater active, get on it, start talking. Somebody will talk to you.
Yep, I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
Winchester, it did have a weather net up, didn't they, Tony?
What?
But
Talk
Winchester
County
did
had
have a
one up.
weather net,
Yeah,
I think
they
Brian
had,
started it.
Brian had the weather net up. He ran for 30, 40 minutes, did he, Tony?
I don't know, was he on the 712?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, he was on 7:30.
He's on to 7:30.
Oh, yeah, that's what I meant,
Yeah.
7:30. Yeah, there's a net in Winchester every Thursday.
Right.
And it is in effect the weather net, because that's the way we just always did it. We had a net once a week that we would call up, and you know, everybody's like checking their equipment and stuff, doing just the regular net. If there was a weather event, somebody, whoever, just would call up the weather net, you know, and say, we're in a formal session. Anybody that's on, report anything that you see, or problems you have, or whatever, and we would just do that for the duration. It used to be, back when we were more active on the repeater, I'm talking back in like the 80s, 90s. If there was like a severe weather watch or something, and there was like storms in the area, we'd bring the net up in informal session. And more or less just the radios are on, you're kind of monitoring, listening, maybe you're talking to somebody, what's going on or whatever. But then if something really bad happened, and they got like a big thunderstorm or tornado spotted or something like that, somebody would call that in, we'd go into formal session and do whatever we had to do until the weather just died down. And at that point, okay, it's passed through us, we'll go ahead and take the net down. There still is a regular weather net on the new 712 machine in Winchester. They do that every Tuesday at 7. And that's the purpose of the entire purpose of that basically repeater is so they can have a dedicated severe weather net. So I can tell you now that I don't know what happened on the last severe weather that we had roll through here, because it all seems to happen after I've gone to bed, and I don't even know. Unless the tornado blows my house down, I'll not know there was anything going on until I wake up in the morning and I walk out and it's like, you know, whatever that show is, the Dawn of the Living Dead or whatever out there.
But I guess in closing though, I just wanted to bring this up, and we can talk about it more later on, but I mean, I don't think we need to kill the net. I mean, we have 30 check-ins every Tuesday. Evidently, people like to check into the net, even if they're just given their call sign and their location. They still check in, and sometimes that's the only time I hear some of those call signs ever.
And the other thing is the Simplex net does draw some things that we would not otherwise test.
And I think that
I think the Simplex net has some important
the
functions.
Simplex net has kind of been a catalyst for people to upgrade their station at home too, because they wanted to be able to reach out further. But if you don't want to do it anymore, Frank, I mean, we can find somebody to take your slot. I understand it. This is all volunteer, but
I just wanted some explanation. I didn't have the answer to it.
But I mean, I think that it would be great that the net control operators actually mixed it up a little bit and added some things and added some injects and things like that to the nets to make it more interesting. But that's totally up to the net control operator. That's all I have.
All right, I think we've had some good discussion on that. A lot of different viewpoints, so let's
Back to net control.
back to net, which is me. Art, you want to go next real quick?
well, I'll speak for Tony. Tony's working on getting ready to do the code class for those that want to learn CW. That's going to be a wintertime thing. What do you think, maybe start in November, Tony, or something like that?
Yeah, kind of get everything lined out. We'll get our code oscillators ready to go and everything. It's basically going to be a much slower version of the Long Island CW course, because I'm only doing it once a week, whereas if you actually sign up with Long Island CW, it's 2 or 3 times a week. You know, there'll be like Zoom. You'll have an actual mentor that'll get on with you on Zoom and do a class, and then they'll get on the radio and stuff like that, whereas we're looking at doing something on Saturdays from, say, 11 to 11:30, 11:30 to 12, something like that. Just doing it here and do 3 letters at a time, do 10 or 15 minutes of like hearing the letters, then sending them back and forth. And
Give them a lot of homework assignments.
yeah, the rest of
Okay,
it,
here's ABC.
here's your 3
Come back
letters.
next week.
When you come back next week, we're gonna add 3 more letters in. So, learn these 3 letters. Maybe, you wanna do stuff on your own, get on Zoom with somebody, or if you wanna do something on the repeaters or something like that, where somebody's sending code over the oscillator or something, maybe we could do, somebody wanna do that. That could be like a second class in the week, something like that for those that wanted to do it. So it'll take us a lot longer to get through it that way than it would just doing it in Long Island CW, but we'll get there.
You check into their resume with CW.
Might be interesting.
Only when Frank's doing it, I can't take, I can't.
All right,
That's all.
that's it.
I wonder what would be involved in actually
Yeah, back to-
trying to send my call sign via CW over the 7.6 machine. I can't imagine that'd be very easy with the. Yeah.
With that keyer, you just key your mic and do it with the keyer, and then the sound goes over the.
trying to organize that could be a little. I may have to try it at some point.
Bob Hawthorne, anything?
I only have one small request, and I don't even know if it's possible, David. Can you turn down the volume on the identifier on the 7.6?
I've been after.
Can you remote into it and turn down the volume?
I'll look at it next time I go down there.
Thank you.
Yeah, because if there's a conversation and that
Yeah,
idea
it
goes over,
buries
it drowns
everybody.
It buries
everything else
everybody,
out.
yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
because I have my
Next time
repeater
it's
set
saying
at
it's not
low
loud enough.
volume for the identifier.
Yeah.
I can speed it up a little more.
Yeah.
That might be a good thing too.
I think I got it at 20 words per minute now. I think I can go up to 26. Make it over with quicker. But I couldn't, there was no volume control in the code plug software. There was, I could adjust the tone and I could adjust the speed. So I'll tweak it some more though.
Bart,
We're still
I know you've been waiting patiently.
Election coming up. Make sure your dues are paid up. By the end of this month, I'll be sending over the list to Brad to be making up the ballots and sending out the ballots. And if you haven't paid your dues by the end of the month, then your name will be left off. You won't get a ballot. That's the first thing. Second one, we do need additional candidates to run. It doesn't hurt to have a couple of people running for each office. Sometimes you probably get started looking at the officers that you have. Most of us have been on there for several years. And but new candidates need to be sent in so we can get them on the ballot. We will print the ballots the first week in November, and they will be mailed out that same week. So, like I said, you got to get your dues paid so that you'll be on the mailing list. And then we also need new candidates in there. That's it.
Thank you, Bart. Questions for Bart? Or any of the officers? Next is Jim. So officers report, and we'll let you start your program. Your officers report, and then we'll let you start your program.
Yeah.
No,
Oh,
your
do
report.
my report. Yeah, well, tonight we're gonna have, I'm trying to think what good exciting is happening. I have no more planned presentations, so I need some November, December kind of thing. We're looking probably to do a nano VNA presentation, November or December. Looking for somebody who wants to do that. I can do it, but I'd rather not. So if anybody really feels they're good with the nano VNA, we'll set that one up for the next couple months if we can. I don't think I have anything else going on, so.
questions before we get into our program? Jim?
I got it. Well, we did get a great turnout tonight, and most of you guys already got mobile radios and are having no problem doing it, so I'll be singing to the choir, or preaching to the choir, I guess. See if I can make this work right. But we'll talk about mobile radio installation. By the way, I got involved ham radio, I don't know, 20 years ago or so, but when we had the shop, I ended up doing a lot of installs, or matter of fact, more times I had to shoot problems on installs than having to do installs with amateur radio equipment in the cars and so. And that included CB equipment too. Anyways, I didn't think it would work. It's supposed to. It should go forward. It says, there's what you're going to look like when we're all done tonight. That's very professional. I saw this at the Orlando Hamfest.
Well, I thought that was Frank's car.
But you should see the inside. There were 3 or 4 or 5 rigs in there with all kinds of actual rotor controller, of course, because you've got a rotor up there you can see. Anyway,
Wow.
okay. First of all, a couple things we consider when we're doing these things is the physical location of your equipment, the antenna and stuff. Resale issues has always been a concern of mine. Some people get a car and milk it for 20 years, and that's probably not a big concern. That's something you're going to be drilling holes in the dashboard. You want to consider that. I'm sorry?
Oh, he's talking.
Oh, okay. You did ask me a question, right? Oh, okay. And one, I don't know how big it is now, but that used to be a big issue back in the CB days. I don't know if it, now we all have TYTs and Baofangs, and nobody was stealing. So. But that's something to be concerned with. DC power, obviously, the RF and the ECU conflicts, that's become, in the last 20 years or of course, that's a big issue, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then propagation patterns is what we'll finish up with. You want to, obviously, you got to mount it so it's visible. You want to be able to see it while you're driving down the highway at 65 miles an hour, change frequencies, etc. But on the other hand, you don't want it up in the windshield where everybody can see it, where it may disappear on you, unless it's a Baofeng. You have to be careful mounting your transmitter, obviously. The control head you can mount pretty much anywhere, but the transmitter itself or the transceiver, you gotta be careful. There's a whole lot of control units, and any of the new cars have anywhere from 3 to 5 ECUs in them. And you can interfere with those ECUs, and the ECUs can interfere with you. So that's something you gotta consider.
Jim, what's ECU?
Oh, I'm sorry, I call it an engine control unit, but some people call it engine management unit. But they're basically computers that are control brakes and all kinds of stuff. So. And then you've got the antenna ground. There's an RF ground, of course, for your antenna system, and then you've got to make sure you have a good DC ground for the radio, which we will talk about a little more. Considering ease, removal, and maintenance. You have to be able to take it out sometime probably to fix it. Cooling, if you got a 30 or 40 watt unit in there, you have to remove that heat somewhere. You usually have a fan in them, but if you got it stuck in that console next to your seat, you may not get the cooling it needs. This is one, and audio. Most of those things have a crappy speaker system, at least for me anyway. I can't hear you guys, so I certainly can't hear that little 1-inch radio in the car. Dave has taken his output and plugged it into his audio system of the car, and it was super audio. And what's kind of neat is, on these FM repeaters, we've got a very, very wide audio band pass. And if you take that audio out of your radio and plug it into a decent audio system, it sounds really, really good. It sounds crappy on the little 1-inch speakers, or 2-inch speakers at best. So anyways, that's something you might want to consider, and it's easy to do, I would suspect. Just plug it into a USB port if you have the right output from the radio, or if you have an aux input on your audio system to do that. And then you gotta consider, what kind of antenna, what kind of radiation pattern do you want? What kind of antenna, quarter wave, 5/8 wave, et cetera? And then you gotta be concerned with garage clearance, your home garage clearance, or a parking garage downtown, certainly. So, and how long do you wanna keep that antenna up there? Okay, by the way.
Question.
Pardon?
So these ECUs, what, when I keep my mic up and it kills the guy's motor sitting next to me?
What is it? Say it again?
When I keep my mic up and it kills the guy's motor in the next car?
Oh, yeah, I haven't seen that one yet, but I'll tell you a couple examples we have though, that they are weird. By the way, I don't know why the collinear is on here, but just so you know the difference basically between a quarter wave and a 5/8 wave. And that's typically what you would use on your car. A 5/8 wave has more gain, and you'll see it advertised as more gain. Here's the pattern. If you look at the blue line, that's a 5/8, and you'll see much of its power is way up here, and you get about 2 dB of gain out here, where you typically want it if you kind of work a station far away. So 2 dB of gain isn't a whole lot, but that's the advantage with the 5/8. Here's your quarter wave. Typically, it's more like that. So if you were working downtown, you want a quarter wave for sure, because you're going to hit the, wherever you're close to a repeater, you're going to get it up in the air. Whereas the 5/8 is down a little lower, but you probably get a little more direction or a little more distance out of it on the road. And I've covered this before in my classes and stuff, but there's no free lunches. If you got a 20-watt radio, all you're going to put out, everything else is perfect, just 20 watts. The gain on the antenna doesn't mean anything as far as power. What it does mean is the pattern. Where is it going to put it out? For example, again, with this, they rate this guy as a couple dB more, only because he gets out a little bit there and a little bit more here. But that up there, who needs it? I'd rather put that power down here. So anyway, so that's why I say there's no free lunch. You got 20 watts, you get 20 watts. All you can do is tell it which way you want those watts to go. Okay. The higher power units, you don't want to use, if you're going to be running at 30 or 20 or 30 or 40 watts, you do not want to use that cigarette lighter plug. Those are usually rated 10 to 15 amps, and you could blow it. Even at that, they're not rated at 100% duty cycle, which means if you, and I think Kevin did one, he's got, this is a 15 amp circuit I think he had on there, and he held his key down and talked for a while. Well, FM will use every bit of that power all the time you got it keyed, and he melted his cigar lighter plug. So you got to be careful with that. As I said, a 50 watt will probably blow. You can certainly melt something if you key up for a long time. A lot of the bigger the units that are, say, 30 watts and more, especially the more expensive units, will have double leads from the radio. And if you've got them, use them. There's 2 plus leads and 2 minus leads. If you got them, there, use them. If not, you don't have a choice. But sometimes they will fuse both lines, which is interesting, but when you're talking about terrestrial setup normally, why does anybody fuse the negative line? Well, on an automobile, it makes sense. So, because you can develop a short that would hurt things. With that. So, if you do have the double leads on there and used properly, go ahead and use them. Again, you always want to make the stuff short as possible and directly to the battery terminals if you can. If you're only using 10 watts or less, you go ahead and use a cigarette lighter plug. A lot of the newer cars, by the way, will have a fusible link up here and an extra demarcation point for your accessories.
I got a question for Frank. You have 600 watts in your car or 300?
350.
350. So what kind of cables did you run? Did you run a special battery or did you run right to your own single battery?
I got a connector, a back flow board, and I run a cable from my battery to that little box. It's about the size of your little finger.
I think it gets warm, doesn't it?
No, I don't think it does. I've never really checked, but I don't think it does.
Did you run a 350 FM, 2 meter?
No.
Oh, HF.
I run 350 at home on 2 meter, but in a car on HF 3.
HF, yeah, oh, okay.
If you put the top down, it'll air cool.
Well, the car does slow down.
I was kidding about killing somebody's motor, but
It
mine
glows a
does
little bit.
Yeah,
turn
I mean,
on,
you know,
turn.
you're not, at 350 watts, as a single sideband, you're not loading it. I mean, unless you scream in the mic forever, because that's the only time it puts out
No
350
FTA.
watts.
So I got real big cables.
CW, you don't work CW in the car, do you?
No.
Good.
Only well, he's
But then you need all the power.
The reason I don't, I'm too prone to do stupid stuff like that. So kid,
Okay.
various people that
Anyway.
does that.
Okay. Couple things. If you've seen this convoluted tube wire loom, they call it, that's really neat stuff that, especially when you run your battery cables run across your engine compartment or something like that. That stuff routes them nice, and it's, makes it look a lot better than having two red and black wires.
I thought that was called corrugated.
Convoluted tubing, they call it.
Okay.
We use them in the race cars for everything, so. Anyways, when you run a power cable, or even an antenna cable for that matter, but most part with your power cables, you want to, any other wiring in that car, you want to try it, and you can't always do that. If you cross those wires, you want to cross them at right angles to each other. You want to have them crossed like this. The reason is the interference from one to the other is far less when you do it that way. If you run them parallel for 6 foot together, you're probably going to have some crosstalk between them. And ripping grounds. You've seen this stuff probably. You can get it in all kinds of lengths and stuff, but it comes in real handy. One of the biggest noise problems in a car is the exhaust system. Manufacturer's got this long exhaust system out there, and he puts it on a rubber mount to keep the noise from inside your car, the audio noise, right? The problem is that makes that big exhaust pipe a neat antenna. Picks up static and noise, and you can get it, or you can hear it from there. Anyways, so what you typically do in those cases is you use this kind of stuff, and you run it to from the exhaust pipe. There's almost always I should say a tailpipe. There's almost always a point there where you can bolt this to, and then bolt it to the frame. It won't hurt your vibration type noise, but it will get rid of a lot of RF noise. One of the problems with FM, Frank, of course, if you're listening to a single sideband, it picks up all kinds of noise. One of the problems with FM that you probably don't realize, FM doesn't, your squelch probably isn't going to break from noise, but what is happening, that noise is still there. You may not hear it because it didn't break squelch, but if you reference this to, say, an S meter, you may have S4 noise in your car. That means that your signal-to-noise ratio is going to be pretty bad. You won't know it. All you know is this thing doesn't receive too good. Well, the problem is your car may be generating all kinds of noise. The easiest way to check for that is take an AM radio out there with you, or use the AM radio in your car, tune it to a point between stations, and you'll hear that noise. The FM radio just lies to you because FM doesn't pick up noise. I mean, it picks it up. It's in the audio system, but it doesn't get, or it's in the RF system, but it doesn't get into the audio. So that's why it's good to get rid of the noise, because it's going to make you hear better. Anyways, let's see. Yeah, use your grommets. You may have to drill through a firewall, which can be a nightmare, especially on the newer cars, because they got so many wires going through the firewall now. You can't find a spot. But use a grommet when you do, even if it's a plastic. I mean, if it's metal, obviously the issue of shorts. But even if it's plastic, you want to use these things so you don't abrase the wires. These things come in handy. On the battery, you can put them anywhere. For example, let's say you're getting noise from your heater motor. That's another common issue. You put these things on the heater motor leads, and that'll get rid of a lot of it. And you can use almost anything without hurting anything. So it's nice. Okay.
I've got a point and I got a question for you. The first thing is I used to do radio installs, a lot of them.
Well, I'm going to have trouble with this. The what?
And the problem was, even using the corrugated covers, if you have a piece of sharp metal on the outside of that piece of corrugated plastic, it'll still cut through it,
Oh,
it just
yeah.
takes longer.
Sure.
So you need to really focus on making sure that sharp piece of metal,
Good point, yeah.
you
I
know,
mean, you're driving,
isn't a good point.
yeah, right. But you're driving down the road and you're
Yeah.
shaking it constantly, right? So you're right, it's gonna eat through anything. That's why you want a barometer. Good.
Yeah. The other question I have is these new electric vehicles.
I don't even wanna talk about them. No, we'll talk about them a little bit.
Okay.
I've never done, at the shop when we installed these things or worked on them, I've never had to work on an EV or a hybrid, as far as this goes, because there weren't that many hybrids and EVs out there at the time. So I don't have a whole lot of real world experience, but I did read, and everybody's been quite successful with EVs. And I suspect it's because the EV manufacturers were worried about that. So they pretty much did some pretty good installation. Now, the problem you will have with an EV is finding out where to connect it to, or how to get to the point you want to connect it to. So that's one issue.
And I have another, something else, and that is I've discovered that on some newer cars, because of all electronics, if you put a radio in, you avoid your warranty. You gotta check that out.
There is, you can, if it causes a defect that they can point to you on. They have to prove, they have the burden of proof. And the owner's manual, in most owner manuals, they do talk about that. But can't think of the organization, but that says they have the burden of proof, right? So it's like if they tell you had an oil failure, you know, because you use wrong brand of oil, they have the burden of proof. So anyway, so you make sure again, on a newer car, this isn't going to be an issue, but if you got an older car and there's a big strap like this or something like it that goes from the engine block to the frame, or from the engine block to the frame somewhere. If that comes off, that your engine becomes a big transmitter. So you want to make sure all those kind of grounds, and again, we talked about from the exhaust pipe to the frame you want to have on there. Those are the kind of grounds that should be there. Engine block and frame, exhaust system and frames, and you've got to put those on yourself. Again, with the older cars, they all come with what's called R-type plugs. There'll be a plug number with 25AR. And that R again means it's a resistor type plug. All new plugs are resistor type. I mean, all new cars use resistor type plugs. But in the old days, a lot of people say, oh, it's better not to use resistor plugs. That's wrong for a lot of reasons. But if you're going to have a audio or radio in the car, you're going to want to use R-type plugs. Okay, ECUs we talked about. There's ECUs for the engine, transmission, anti-lock brake system. Your entertainment system may have a separate ECU. You've got airbag, cabin controller management system. So there are 3 to 5 different major ECUs in that car. And you want to, as far as your antenna cable goes, and to some degree your power cable, you keep them away from those things. Because they're sending out signals unintentionally, and you can be putting signals into them, which is even worse. There's a CAN bus, that's a little plug underneath your dash, typically by the steering wheel to the left door of the steering wheel. That's called the CAN bus, and that sends all the signals, the monitored signals from the ECUs, so that your service people can plug into it. You want to stay away from that. That's very sensitive. It will send signals right. If you key up right next to that, you will send a signal right into one of your ECUs. And by the way, there are some ECUs under the seat. I think most of the German cars do, but there are ECUs under the seat, so you want to talk to them. Okay, just here's a noise, and you probably already heard these, but spark is a rapid clicking at idle. Again, you're an FM radio, FM transceiver. It probably doesn't pick up too much. You may get some, but you typically can't hear it. Although it's desensitizing your radio, you just don't know it. So that's where the easiest way to do that is to take your regular car audio system, go to an AM station, go to an AM band, and go between 2 stations. And if you're getting a lot of spark, you'll hear it there. Anyways, that's a rapid clicking that increases with engine RPM. And it's a very, when your car is idling, it can be a very, very slow click, depending on how many cylinders you got. I mean, you could actually count the clicks in some cases. Alternator is usually a whine that increases with engine RPM, and about the only way to fix that is with an inline noise filter. One of these snap-on things might help, but I would suggest you just bite the bullet and buy a $20.
That's what I had to do. I had to buy one for my Pathfinder.
Yeah, it's pretty
When I first put that HF radio in it, you could hear it as they increased speed. I'm driving the interstate a lot, and I think it's, I don't know, it was in, it just, it's in line. It's in the electrical system. It's not the antenna system, it's in the electrical system. It's in the electrical, it's plugged up, it goes between my radio and my battery.
Yeah, it goes, it's not usually capacitive. It may, a more expensive one may have a coil or something in there, but typically it's just a capacitor.
They seem to fix it.
Yeah, they typically do. And by the way, that whine doesn't, you can make it louder if you turn on your air conditioning, for example. Something that draws more current, that generates more RF from the alternator. So that's how you can determine, yeah, that's definitely an alternator, it's a whine. It does increase with engine RPM, but if it increases load on the fan or anything else, then you can suspect, you know for sure it's over there. ECUs, here's the problem one. They make RF noise at multiple frequencies. And it can be very difficult to get rid of it. So if the frequency doesn't change much with your speed or RPM, it's very likely an ECU. It could be an ECU in either case. For example, like we had one that was making a lot of noise, and it was an ECU that controlled the transmission. And as you go faster, the noise got went to a different frequency.
So is the noise actually on the line, or is it coming out of the device itself?
Yes. Yes.
So if you put an enclosure around the device itself.
Well, they do that, and by the way, they do a good job. There are decoupling capacitors all through that thing, but mainly because they don't want interference to come in, but it does the same thing on the way out. The thing is shielded pretty good, and they even shield against water, of course, obviously. But it's a microprocessor inside there, and it's running at RF frequencies, and that RF frequency is going to put out some signal somewhere. The problem is just to get it down as low as possible. Again, your FM, you're probably never going to hear any of this stuff unless it's real loud, and then it'll get into your audio system of your radio, and you'll be able to hear it. But typically, the RF section of an FM radio won't hear noise, at least most noise. So you got to test with an AM radio. Anyway, fan. This is a common one, by the way. The fans for the air conditioning and heat, the capacity compartment generate a lot of noise. Easy to find out if that's it. You just shut it off. And then we talked about the ferrite beads, chokes, and auto filter devices can help in all these cases.
Question.
Yeah.
The AC and heat fan, is there anything you can do about them? Is another one of those alternator filters type thing, or what?
Is there anything you can do about the AC and heat?
Fan noise.
Yeah, these work pretty good for that. The little ferrite beads.
Okay.
So, again, that's noise you're not going to hear on an FM radio, but it could get into your audio section.
I get an S6 or S7 on a disconnected radio.
In your car. It's a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the little QIT, it breaks squelch.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, you might go out there with an AM radio, like a little transistor.
Well, that's what's funny is the AM FM works fine. In the car. So whatever.
Well, yeah, because they.
Whatever it is, it's up on the 150 megahertz range. It's not in the.
Yeah. If it's breaking, if it's getting through on FM, it's loud, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, when you talk, let me ask you a question though, just to be more specific. You talk about the ferrite beads. Like I have ferrite beads on my power line coming into the radio.
Yeah.
And sometimes more than one, depending on what vehicle. But are you saying also put ferrite beads on the power lines going from to your fan and stuff like that, to do that additionally, or just the ones on the input line,
And
power line
there's
on the radio.
There's no great science to this. If that fan is generating noise, the best place to put it is at the noise.
Okay.
Okay, but, you may be able to eliminate it, you know, put it on your rig, but it's RF, and you just want to keep it away from your radio.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I have seen where you gotta put it both places.
Yeah, you can't have too many of them.
Right.
Yeah, they don't hurt a thing, and they're.
Most times, if you put it on the fan itself, the alternator itself, close to it, it'll take care of it. But I've had cars in the past, I don't have anything on this car.
Usually fan noise, in my experience, has been pretty easy to get rid of.
And do it both places.
Okay, that's what I didn't know, thank you.
By the way, you can take these things in, if you have the wire available to you, you can loop it through here a couple of times,
Yeah.
right?
So them work good on stereo speakers too.
You want it what?
At home, them works great on stereo speakers
Oh, yeah, yeah, sure.
for your neighbors and stuff.
All right, engine check light, here's one of the things we did, and that was engine check light. It turns on an engine check light, and you think you've got some massive failure, and all you did is put a, the way the ECUs in the car work, the main engine management system, they don't hurt, they'll turn a light on, when, for example, they will detect a misfire in a spark plug, for example. And they will sit, and if it happens more than 4 times in 1 mile, or 4 times in 10 minutes or something, they will turn on a check light. It doesn't hurt a thing, you just have to reset the check light. If it does it consistently, then obviously you've got to go see the dealer, and he's got to replace a coil pack or whatever the issue is. But, so anyway, but you could get an engine check light, and first thing you do is is you reset it. Problem is, you can take it to one of these auto parts stores, and they will reset it for you. They'll read the code, tell you what the code is, and reset it. And I can tell you this: they're going to read the code, and the code is going to say you've left your gas tank filler is loose.
Yeah.
Or they'll give you 3 or 4 different things it could be. You say, okay, thanks, and you leave. And once they reset it, hopefully it doesn't come back on again. So, anyways, speed changes. We see this one was relatively common, and I guess that's just because of where the cruise control wiring is. And they would be doing 60 down the highway, and they'd key up, and every time they'd talk, the car would go up 1 mile an hour more. And when they get to 95, they say, what the hell? No, anyway, and we've seen it go down the other way too, so. Or turn speed control right off, which is probably more likely. And then, if you lose all your program frequencies, or your airbag deploys,
You'll notice.
yeah, you gotta fix it. Anyway, that's that.
Has there actually been a case where the airbag deployed?
Never seen it, and I suspect we probably won't. They knew that they are very, it's hard to make an
That would be
airplane.
rude awakening.
Yeah, right. It's hard to make an airbag ECU fail.
Sometimes they don't deploy
Unless
even
they
after
would-
you hit a wall.
Pardon?
Sometimes they have trouble deploying even after you hit a wall.
Yeah, it could be. Now, if you hit one, it'll go off pretty quick, but anyways, but it takes a lot of G's even then. Okay, so now you got your antenna on it, you got all your wiring, you got all the noise out of there, and what you want to do, well, yeah, you want to do an SWR sweep on your antenna in its mounting place on the car. Don't bother doing it at home or even making a ground plane to test it at home because it's not telling you anything. It may tell you the antenna's okay, but it won't tell you much about what it is once you get it in the car. So mount it on the car, do an SWR sweep. It's some bands are better than others, but hey, if you get that thing down below 2, you're doing good. Don't worry about it. 1.1 is perfect, but you're not going to see 1.1 perfect across the band. But 2 is not a problem. So anything under that is fine. If not, I don't know what it said here. Assuming your if not, if your SWR is not good, if not good, assume, and we assume your coax is good because you could have bad coax, obviously. Check that. And don't worry too much about the coax. RG8X, that's the cheap quarter-inch, I guess it's quarter-inch thick, something like that. It's 10 feet, 10 feet long pieces. It wouldn't be a loss at 450 megahertz. You're never going to notice that, so don't worry about it. you don't want 100 foot in the car, but, yeah, you know. If you wanna go, even to R174, that's still only, about 2 dB loss, so not a big deal to worry about, just make something, use a decent coax, because sometimes you're gonna run it in a place where it may get pinched or bent, and don't bend it at 90-degree angles, obviously, because it'll actually change the capacity, because if the wire bends within there, it changes the actual impedance of the cable, so you don't want to bend them too tight. So don't bother doing any SWR checks when you're not mounted, it won't tell you much. If the check's okay, and all the other stuff is good, we go propagate. Oh, this interrupts this thing for a second. We hear about picket fencing. Everybody know what picket fencing is? Okay, all right. But just if you don't know why it is there, it's a reflected. Remember your old TV set? Yeah. When you had a shadow. You know, remember this? You had tuned in. Maybe nobody ever had one of these TV sets, but the old TV set, the antenna up there, you sometimes would see a shadow, and that was caused because you were receiving a signal out of phase, and that's exactly what picket fencing is. If you picture two signals, you're getting the main signal from a repeater or another station, and I'm getting another signal delayed by a few microseconds, and it is bouncing because it bounced off another building. And that signal could be almost as strong as that one. In this case, I've made it a little weaker, but this is just an algebraically add. Here's my repeater signal. Here's the bounce signal, and here's the actual signal that I'm going to hear. You can see it's far less because those two signals, because they're out of phase, they algebraically add with each other, and you end up with this signal. And as of course you're moving down the road, it fades in and out. So anyway, that's what picket fencing is. So you want to only get your okay. For antenna propagation, what time? I don't want to take you guys on too long. But for antenna, you can test your system pretty darn good, relatively anyways, with a simple RF signal meter. And that takes a germanium diode, small hand-wound coil. You don't even need the coil, by the way, but a little potentiometer and a 50 amp micro. Here's one of those things right here. This is one I built years and years ago, and you can see it. We'll put it up here on HT. I don't know if you've ever seen them. Sure. Oh, there we go. I just pinned the needle up very close. I'm going to turn the sensitivity on a little bit. So I don't know if you can see that. It's pinning the needle. So if I go over here, I get a far less. There you go. Anyways, something like that, you can do a propagation pattern, and I'll show you. Here's another one I built. This one's a little more, I did Arduino, and I like doing Arduino stuff. But this one, the way it works, this is it's much easier, by the way, to do a signal test with this one. She's done talking. There you go. It tells you what the signal strength is, and it takes you have to key it up for 3 seconds. And what it does, it says it averages all the RF over that 3-second period. So if you want to do a really good propagation check, it's kind of neat. But what you need, if you take it, and the easiest way to do this is the way I've done it, you park your car in the driveway, make sure there's nothing around it for, say, a 20-foot or 10-foot circle. Just depends on how much power you're going to test with. But and you can test with 5 watts if it works. If your meter is sensitive enough, test at 10, 20 watts, whatever. Again, make a 20-foot open space, or make sure you got a 20-foot open space with nothing in the area, because any metal, clotheslines, trees, whatever, is going to affect this propagation pattern, and you want to do it. You want a good propagation pattern. Take one of your instruments, like either one of these things, and the easiest way to do it is you put it out. You normally want to see a radiation pattern that what it looks like at about 15, 20 degrees off the car, right? So you want to put it 20 foot away, you put a ladder, and you mount this. You just lay this thing on here, and you go and key up, and you read whatever it says, and you write it down. You do that in 10 spots around the car. By the way, that's this unit here with the Arduino in it. I can say I want to do it with 12 spots or 18 spots or whatever, and say it records the 18 spots, and I can play it back and write it down on paper later. But if you're just using a simple meter like that, you obviously gotta write it on it. Again, you take the unit, put it on the ladder, and you get away. And you let somebody else key up, and you look at the meter and see what it reads. Write that down. Do that in all the places you wanna do it around the car. It's important that you're at 20 foot, because a radio signal goes down by powers of 4. So if you're 20 foot here, if you take the measurement at 20 foot away from the car here, and you take it at 22 foot over here, you're not gonna get the right reading, or comparable reading. So you wanna make sure you're doing it on a perfect circle. Okay.
You know, something, I know what you're talking about is like, where's the best place to put your antenna on your car? That's the purpose of this.
Exactly.
One thing that I just want to add to that is modern cars now are aerodynamic, right? And they're round a lot of places. And just a real world example, I've got an older Nissan Pathfinder. I've had it for a long time, a lot of new, but anyway, still it's got a sunroof, it's got a roof rack, and so my 2 meter 440 antenna, the only place I could put it was like towards the front, and it's slanted a little bit. And I don't have a flat spot to put it. And as I'm driving away from Lexington, I go into Georgetown, I start losing the 7.6 repeater pretty early on, because the way my antenna is slanted a little bit away from Lexington. And coming back towards Lexington, I pick it up a lot earlier. So it does make a huge difference where you put your antenna, and if it's as level as possible.
I will show you. By the way, that's basically South Central. That's the schematic of this guy here. Somebody added a coil. You can tune it to the frequency you're most interested in with the antenna, but the coil makes it even a little more selective. But typically, you don't need it. It's not a problem. You do want to put it in a metal box or some sort of thing. Okay, here's propagation pattern. Somebody took a lot of samples here, but I found it on the net. And this is a left side mirror mount that you can see with that. We're talking 25, 26 dB down. That's quite a bit in its radiation pattern. So, well, no, it wouldn't be 20, it'd be 16, 18 dB. But this thing is very sensitive. Okay. But there's an example. Here's on the back bumper. That looks like Frank's car right there. And you see, he's got a hell of a good signal out of the back end, which is normal.
It's a Volkswagen. It's always got a signal out the back.
As long as you back up everywhere you go, you get a good reception and you're ready.
But it's pretty noticeable on that one anyways. Here's one, believe it or not, this is my truck. This is when I had the antenna, it was a quarter wave on the roof of the truck. And it's relatively symmetrical. I didn't take very many measurements, and I just ran around the yard doing this. You can make it a lot prettier if you want to take the time. And since then, I have now got it mounted on the side up here, so I'm being interested to see what happens. It is mounted up high on the roof, but it's still going to be more offset, obviously. I think that's the end of this thing. It is.
Well, thank you.
So, okay.
Very good. Thank you, Jim.
A lot of great information there.
A lot of great information. You went over it quick, but
I'm sure if you talk to anybody, you get questions.
Now I got a lot of work to do on my Prius.
Yeah.
Now I know what I've got to do to my Prius.
So, anybody have anything else to bring up or anything? So with that, I will adjourn the meeting. Take it.
motion to adjourn.
We're looking for an NOV&A expert, so
Yes, we are.
anybody want to volunteer?
Thanks, everyone. Do we go downstairs, David?
Yeah.
They can do a little bit more attention.
Not the TV.